Oh, and good evening. It's August 21st, 2025, and welcome to another episode of Sons of the Father. We're continuing our short series on prayer with my dad, John Wern, my brother, Jim Wern, and I. We're going to discuss some thoughts, some ideas, and practices maybe that we refer to as a prayer life. We highly recommend watching another video with this, which will serve as the launching point for the points that we're going to talk about tonight. And the video is Why Should I Pray? It's with Emu Shalev from Aleph Beta. Link to it is in the description. We're going to play it for you. However, the link is there so you can listen to it again. So here we go with more of this discussion of prayer journeys, ancient reflections, personal experiences, modern insights as we explore this intimate divine dialogue. So welcome again to Sons of the Father on the Dusty Feet. Our hope with the Dusty Feet is to foster discussion and help build and support communities. If you are not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. DustyFeet.com. That's our primary place to find everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Facebook, at the Dusty Feet. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. And 3, we have a Discord channel. The invite link is there below. Be vocal, be written, be loving. And 4, and as always, you are welcome to send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. These places, they will be moderated, and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation. Belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. And of course, before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, that is when you please click that subscribe button. The reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, that is when you please click the like button, because that is how YouTube will choose to share these to more people if they wish. So, personal prayer journeys. This is our final part. This is our part 8. Okay? We're going to wrap this up with a discussion from a video that we probably wouldn't normally think about when we're addressing this prayer thought, and it's from the what we would say the Jewish side of the setup. I would say the Tanakh or an Old Testament thought that goes with this. But I think we might enjoy it as we listen to it. I suggest you listen to it all the way through, because at the end, I think we're going to find some things that we didn't expect to hear. Yeah, just take a listen. Guys, anything you want to say before we hit it?
No, I'm going to save it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is Emu Shalev with this Why Should I Pray from Aleph Beta. Enjoy this one.
Prayer is boring. There, I said it. You know what I mean though, right? Early in the morning, frantically flipping pages, mumbling words as quickly as we can. After all, we need to hurry or we're going to hit the morning traffic and the long lines at Dunkin' Donuts. I know, it sounds awful, but it's not too far off from how many of us experience prayer. And I think there are a few reasons we have problems with prayer. For one, we have a problem with the way we think about prayer. We approach it as another ritual, another mitzvah to check off the to-do list before we move on to other things we want to do. The problem isn't that people don't want to daven, it's that they want to have davened. If you like that line, don't give me credit. Rumor is Rav Soloveitchik said it. By default, this mentality sets us up for an experience that's, let's just say, less than inspiring. And another reason we feel disconnected from prayer is because, deep down, do we really believe that it even works? I suspect we don't really think that prayer can do anything, can really change God's mind. Because why would the infinite, all-knowing being respond to my requests? After all, He's the creator. He doesn't need me. So let's explore these questions together and see if we can learn a bit more about prayer and how it can be meaningful. Let's start by focusing on that last question. Does prayer even work? So, some people take a more rational approach to prayer. They say that it's not about asking God for things or changing God's mind. That's impossible. Really, prayer is about changing ourselves. When we pray, we meditate on God's greatness and remind ourselves of the things that are important to Him, like justice, peace, healing the sick, and building a righteous society. The primary goal of prayer is for us to remember what God desires and to instill those values more deeply in our hearts. But there's a problem with this explanation, namely the Torah. Because guess what? In the Torah, people pray for things and God answers. Like when Rivka is barren, she and her husband Yitzchak pray to God and, lo and behold, she conceives twins. How did this happen? Did Yitzchak and Rivka change themselves? Did they enroll in a week-long couples retreat or read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Parents? No, the Torah says they prayed and God answered them. So, in our quest to figure out how to relate to prayer more meaningfully, we have a little ray of hope. Prayer really does seem to matter to God. It's not just some kind of psychological yoga. Prayer works. But how exactly? Why would our prayers be important to God? I think our path to finding an answer goes through the most famous example of prayer changing God's mind, the episode of the golden calf. In that story, God was bent on destroying the children of Israel, but Moshe prayed and changed God's mind. How did Moshe do that? Well, let's take a look, and I think we'll find a whole new way of thinking about prayer. The Israelites build a golden calf, and God decides that He's had enough. He says to Moshe, Lech red ki shichet amcha asher ha'elita me'eretz Mitzrayim. Go down the mountain, Moshe. Your people, the ones you took out of Egypt, have been totally corrupted. Now, that's a little weird. What does he mean, Moshe's people? Didn't God take them out of Egypt? And God continues, Hanichali, leave me alone, so I can unleash my wrath and wipe them all out. I'll start over again with you. Moshe responds, Lama Hashem yechara abcha ve'amecha. Come on, God, why are you so mad? Pause right there. This seems like the silliest thing he could say right now. Why is God mad? Look at what happened. Just a few weeks ago, God revealed Himself at Sinai and said, I am your God. Don't worship any idols. And in a matter of weeks, the people are literally dancing around an idol at the bottom of the mountain. Is Moshe so out of touch? What kind of argument is this? So maybe Moshe realizes this argument is a dud because he tries another angle. He reminds God how He took them out of Egypt with miracles and wonders, and then adds, Anyway, God, what would the Egyptians say if you destroy them? It really wouldn't look so good. These arguments are also strange. God knows He took them out with miracles. That's why He's so upset. And then the argument about it looking bad in front of the Egyptians, is Moshe trying to guilt trip God into forgiving them? Does he think God is worried about his PR? None of this sounds too convincing. So Moshe tries one more. Zechor la'Avraham li'Yitzchak u'Yisrael avadecha. Remember Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Asher nishbata lahem bach. You promised them that their descendants would become a great nation. You can't destroy the people, God. You would have lied to our forefathers. After this, finally, God agrees. He won't destroy the nation after all. So what happened here? Did Moshe misfire the first few times until he found the right argument to convince God to get him to change his mind? He just needed to remind God about his promise? It's hard to imagine that God forgot about it, but then smacked his metaphorical forehead and said,
Ah, Moshe, you're right. What was I thinking? Of course I can't destroy them.
It's really not so clear to us why this prayer worked. But I think we find a clue if we look more closely at the moment when God agreed not to destroy the people. The Torah says, Vayinachem Hashem al hara'a asher diber la'asot le'amo. God changed His mind about the punishment He wanted to give to His people. Look at that word, le'amo. Remember how this whole thing began? God said to Moshe, Lech red ki shichet amcha. Your people have messed up, Moshe, the people you took out of Egypt. Now they are Amo. They're God's people once again. This is what Moshe's prayer achieved. In fact, every part of his prayer, even those lines that seem to make no sense, were all a plea for God to reclaim ownership over his people. They aren't four separate arguments. It's one long argument. Let's look at it once again more carefully. Moshe started off by saying, Lama yechera apcha ve'amecha. It seemed so absurd for Moshe to ask, why are you so angry? But that's not what he's saying. Look at the word he uses. Amecha. Your people. He's putting the ball back in God's court by gently, subtly reminding him, you said they're my nation, they're yours, God. No matter how angry they make you, you can't just get rid of your people. And Moshe continues. He reminds God that he took his people out of Egypt, b'koach gadol uviyad chazakah, with great miracles and wonders. You overturned heaven and earth for their sake. The whole world witnessed this act of unbound love between you and your people. Then he moves to the Egyptians. You know what Egypt will think if you destroy the Israelites? They'll say, see, even God's own people couldn't stand a chance. No one can last in a relationship with this angry, destructive God. Moshe pleads again, let go of your anger, God. You can't do this, le'amecha, to your people. And as the final push, Moshe goes all the way back to the beginning of God's love affair with his people. Remember Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? You promised that their descendants would become a great nation. God, the children you were talking about are down there. They might not be as righteous as their ancestors, but they are the fulfillment of your promise. You can't get rid of them. You can't just walk out on your people. And it worked. God changed his mind. Vayinachem Hashem al hara'a asher diber la'asot le'amo. He abandoned his plans of destruction le'amo for the sake of his people. That's what made the difference. Moshe didn't tell God something he didn't know. He didn't convince God of anything. That's not what prayer is. And Moshe didn't pray by working on himself and changing himself such that he deserved for Israel to be saved. Prayer doesn't work like that either. His prayer was all about relationship, reminding God that the people had strayed on their end of the relationship, but that they wanted back in, and that God should want back in too. His prayer tapped into God's unbreakable love of his people, and God responded in kind by returning to that loving relationship. That's what prayer is. It's a natural and organic conversation that emerges from our relationship with God. As a part of that relationship, we sometimes make requests. We sometimes get answered. Other times, we express thanks and remind ourselves not to take that relationship for granted. But Moses was a long time ago. What about us today? Is that relationship with God still accessible to us? Does God still care about our prayers? I want to take a look at one more source with you that says, yes, God does want our prayers. Because that core relationship that Moshe touched with his prayer isn't something that once existed for a certain period of time or for select prophets. It's at the heart of what all prayer is really about. And it's a dynamic that's built into the very fabric of creation. Take a look at the Talmud in Chulin, page 60b. The rabbis discuss a strange inconsistency in the Torah's description of creation. The first chapter of Genesis says that all plant life was created on day 3 of creation, and that Adam and Eve were created on day 6. But in the second chapter, in another description of creation, we're told that Adam was created when there was not yet any grass on the ground or bushes in the fields. The verse goes on to say that it hadn't rained yet either, because Adam wasn't around to work the land. The rabbis raise an eyebrow at this. First of all, we know from chapter 1 that the plants were all created way before Adam. Where did they go in chapter 2? And what's this strange bit about there not being any rain without Adam? What does one have to do with the other? So, the rabbis say something incredible to resolve this. They say that the plants were created back on day 3, but they weren't visible yet. They were waiting, just beneath the surface. For what? For someone to come along and pray for rain. Which is exactly what happened. Once Adam was created, he prayed. God brought the rainfall, and the world burst into life. The rabbis say we learn from here that God desires prayer. You see, when Adam first arrived on the scene, all of the pieces of creation were in place, ready to go. but they were stuck, held in suspended animation, waiting for something to bring them to life. The rabbis are saying that for creation to be truly alive, it needs prayer. Not the rote, ritualistic kind of prayer, but the prayer that's part of an active, caring relationship between the world and its creator. This is what Adam brought to the world. His prayer bridged the gap between heaven and earth, between the rain above and the seeds below. According to this vision of prayer, the world itself is nothing other than a backdrop for this incredible relationship to take place. The reason God listens to prayer is because woven into the very fabric of creation is God's desire to be in relationship with people, even with us, even today. And prayer is the way we engage in that relationship. This is the mentality we need to bring to our prayer. Yes, we go through the motions, stand up, sit down, turn to page 52, whisper, say it loud, but we can't confuse the choreography for the dance. Before you step into prayer, take a moment to check in. Ask yourself, what's really on my mind and in my heart today? What do I need to talk to God about right now? Make your prayer about your life and your concerns, and connect not only to the ritual of prayer, but to what you're praying for and who you are praying to. Because from Adam to Moshe to each one of us, the essence of prayer remains the same. It's about leaning into our relationship with God, bearing our hearts in an intimate dialogue, and living in an authentic, dynamic relationship with our Creator. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about Tefillah in depth, click the links below to see more Aleph Beta videos on prayer. You might have a hard time leaving once you get there, but you won't be sorry that you did. Thanks.
Okay. So, yeah, I love Emu. I love his energy, what he brings to the piece. And just the personal side of prayer, we probably didn't expect. The intimate relationship side, just like we've been talking about. So that's not necessarily a new thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's not necessarily a other sect, the other half of the book. It's not really half, but we'll go with that on that side of the equation. So, Daddy, what points?
Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed his presentation, like you said, his energy and that. And as we talked about it, just among the three of us, you saw a lot of similarities in prayer and a lot of agreement in how you go about prayer. And the things that I got out of it, well, one of the things that I have started doing is because I'm ADHD and it's really hard for me to just pray, because I start praying and then pretty soon I'm thinking about what am I going to have for dinner, and oh gee, well, what are we going to, goes on and on like that. So what I started doing at night, because I always have a prayer time at night, and I write out my prayers, and I started doing that about, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and it's helpful. It keeps me focused on prayers instead of just writing things. And then what happened that day, and how did that, how'd that impact me, etc. So that's one thing that slowed me down. And as I just said, my prayer life has changed over the years. In my early praying days, I was raised in the Catholic Church, as many people listening probably already know. And so I didn't pray. And the only, as far as I knew, the only time I prayed was after confession. You had to say so many prayers to get cleansed. And so, and they gave you a rote prayer, Hail Marys or Our Fathers or that kind of thing. But when I became a believer or started going to a Baptist church, my prayers were ritual prayers. I prayed about something. I prayed for something.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed, and I don't know when it changed, but it was a few years ago. Now it's a conversational prayers where I share my ideas, what happened, what I'd like to see. When when Joshua was struggling, one of my grandsons a year or so ago, I prayed for him specifically, and so they were okay, Lord, how can I help him? How can you help him? What can be done? There's only so much I could. So it's changed to conversational, and I don't find prayer boring anymore because I don't. It's not a ritual to me. Now it's a conversation, and it's very different, and I wouldn't call it fun, but it's like having a conversation with a friend. So that's one of the first set of things I got out of it. James?
I like the video. It caught me by surprise. I fully expected to have it be something a little more orthodox isn't the right word because that is not fair, but more stuffy, I guess.
Okay.
And he was very engaging, very contemporary, both in the illustrations that you saw, the way that he talked, his interpretation of the words that God spoke. Were all fun. The fact that the Jewish people struggle with prayer as much as we do was kind of an eye opener. It's like they seem like such a devout people. Like this is something that's more ingrained in them than it would be in us, because their belief system has been around longer than ours has. And so that part kind of, threw me in a very pleasant way. It was like, oh, that's good to know. And we'll talk about this probably in a little bit, but I mean, obviously some of the things that he said with regard to, rabbinic tradition and those kinds of things, aren't necessarily something we go, that's scriptural, because it's not, but does it give you food for thought? Absolutely. Does he have a point to what he was talking about? Bringing it back to, prayer being relational. Dad, a lot of the stuff you talk about in terms of your Catholic upbringing, it was very much not that. And then even I've got a couple of friends of mine that aren't believers, but every once in a while they'll call me up and say, hey, can you throw up a prayer for me? As if, there's some magic formula that if I pray it, God might actually hear it. Whereas if they pray it, and that it's some kind of, not talisman, but it's like, it's a
Wave
formula.
it around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is. But I mean, trying to sit down and talk to them about that part of it, they're not going to understand. So I liked how he brought it back around to, even using, Moses's conversation with God, as well as the example of Adam, that it brings it back to what's at the heart of it, and that is relationship. And so it was really good.
It's interesting. The expectation in the tradition side of the equation, and we're very defensive in our traditional positions that we do. Make no bones that the way we think we want to look at these things, we get very defensive about it, and yet we know they're tradition based. We've been saying this for many weeks now. That the expectation, a lot of people will say, well, I did this and I felt this, or they put on this setup. These are one of those challenges for me that I have. This is the challenges that Bob has when we do church-wide things. Like church-wide, everybody should be on this prayer schedule, yada, yada, yada. Everybody should be fasting on yada, yada, yada. Everybody should be, and we get these group scenarios, and then we wonder why people disengage or why they don't feel engaged. And we go, well, this is what you're supposed to do, Dad. That's that core of the Catholic side of the equation is that's just what you do, you know.
Well, it was that way in the 40s. I have no idea how
Oh,
they are
fair,
now.
fair. My experience and exposure to Catholic believers, it's a mixed bag, depending on, like I said, a contemporary. Um, Jimmy offline asked a question about one of the graphics had a synagogue where you had the men in the middle, the women were on the outsides, and I said that's a Orthodox synagogue, and so you're going to have that kind of look. And so we build these tradition scenarios in for purpose. And I'm not even saying it's bad purpose. It's just we have a thought in mind, how to remove distraction, how to do this, how to do that when we pray. How often we keep pushing this daily thing, this 3 times a day thing. And yet scripturally, it really doesn't talk to it like that. It doesn't address it like that. We go that way, and like I said, that's what I'm talking about. These modern insights, right? The ancient reflection side shows us some interesting things that sometimes are very different from our tradition side, and a lot of times our default position is, well, my experience is this, and I agree, it is your experience. That might not necessarily be somebody else's expectational experience. It's an awkward title, and I'm not even sure it fits, but just the way we do what we do. And like Emu said, and Jimmy, your point's clear on this one, it's the heart side of the equation. And when you're doing this, again, what are you expecting? One time, and then I'll be quiet here for a sec. You're where people ask us to pray, right? So like we have this inner plug or this deal or something you're going to say it is going to appease God more than me. Right. And we've learned as we've been here in Dusty Feet, we talk about this all the time, that this is not a God of appeasement. He's taught us that, if anything, through Scripture, it's never been about appeasement. It's always been, no matter what you do, point is, if your heart's not there. Yeah. So, Dad,
appeasement. That's quite a word. In our one of the morning devotionals that I'm going through, it's the heading is absence. Meaning is God absent. And of course, I believe that God is never absent. I've been absent many times, but God isn't. But going back to the prayer thing, does prayer matter to God? And what it made me think of is, does conversation matter to a friend? And I have guys that I talk with every week out of the area on the phone. Some are still back in California. And it matters to both of us, to the conversation, because we encourage one another, we challenge one another about how we're living and what we're doing with our lives, through our lives, through our marriages or lack of, and that's what I was talking about earlier, is how I look at prayer now is just in conversation. It's a relationship, and how do you build a relationship? And isn't prayer isn't about telling God something He doesn't already know. God, do you know, and would you help, and all those kind of things that I used to pray, and that I don't now, because my personal opinion is God already knows it. What I want to do is I want to get in line with him. What does that mean? Does it mean pay more attention to what he's trying to say? Does it make me a conversation? And a conversation is give and take. Am I listening to him? Do I care what he says? Do I care what his plan is for me? Those are things that I actually didn't care. I was
Mhm.
asking for something, expecting it, and it that I think Bob, what you and I were talking about. Um, Sometimes God has said something to prophets in the past. Not that I'm a prophet, but the thing didn't happen for 100 years, 200 years, and will this that I'm praying for, will it happen now? Should it happen now? And so, um, and go ahead, Jim. I've got some other things, but I want to make sure we all get a chance to talk.
I liked the fact that he made me think about the dynamic of relationship with God.
Mhm.
Even to the point, and I know I've heard it in sermons, and I'm sure I've preached it as well. Those situations where we see people in the scriptures change God's mind,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
there theologically that's a conundrum, because we say God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he doesn't change. But if he changes his mind, that means something does change.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
is it really a situation, like when God was going to wipe out the nation of Israel, because of the golden calf thing? It's like, would he really have? Is that true that Moses actually changed God's mind, or was this an exercise in, helping Moses to understand the dynamic of whatever? I don't know,
Mhm.
but what I like about it is it makes me wonder, and it also tells me I don't have all the answers, and we're not
Mhm.
going to have all the answers, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
And I'm more and more comfortable with the unknowns
Mhm.
about God and about the
Mhm.
future and about whatever
Yeah.
than I used to be, back in my 20s and 30s, where I was convinced about everything that was right and wrong and was ready to tell the whole world.
Mhm.
It's not the same anymore.
Mhm.
And he was just reminding me, that's right. You know what?
Yeah.
I still need that relationship with God, because I don't always understand.
Mhm.
But he has proven himself trustworthy
Mhm.
to know that it's okay, and that's not going to change his dynamic, his relationship with me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I will echo that. Um, I'll tell you what I struggle with. We have a God that says, and so it's us understanding the word fear me. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I don't think it means what we think when we fear somebody. I think there's a much deeper scenario to that. And I see him as king, right?
Mhm.
And creator. And so is my relationship supposed to be buddy buddy? I'm mixed with that. And it's again one of those things, Jimmy, we have these, and most of our hesitation when we read something in scripture is that we have this theological side that all of a sudden we have this baggage that we have in a bag and we're carrying it with us, and then all of a sudden we read something where it says mind's changed. We go, well, it can't happen. And I said, but it is. Okay? It is. Our theological, whatever position we've developed literally for us in the last 500 years. Okay?
Mhm.
Not the thousands of years prior to that where that didn't exist. So that's not a comparative part to the story. So in the storyline, that's the point. Um, when we're growing up, Dad, and we get in trouble, and we'll say, if you don't, then this is going to happen to you, right? So are you going to spank them? Are you going to do whatever the case may be? Is the bluff called? Okay. So we have Noah, and then we have Moses, and we have this point. And Jimmy, you asked the point: would God really do that? Well, you know what? We have a little story back there that said he'll consider it, right? So again, I'm not necessarily compelled. Said it's a game to be, it's like, are you sure you want to do that? Because God even said, he gave you the land, he gives the space, and then he goes, here, as long as you behave, pay attention. Our lives, our little microcosm looks in our lives. And he says, and if you don't, then what? And if that's one of the things that I said, instead of looking for the theological position of what I think God is, because don't forget, in something negativa, I always forget what the whole term is, but it's basically everything that God is, I'm not, right? And yet the scripture totally does not agree with that statement. We are created in his image. We're supposed to be emissaries of his. We're supposed to be. So all of a sudden, that doesn't play. What other parts in our theology drive us in this? And then how does that affect our prayer, right? How does that affect this communication that we have? And is it supposed to be buddy-buddy, or is it supposed to be like approaching a king? So how am I doing that? That's literally, those are the things that challenge me in this. So,
yeah,
to be honest.
Fair. Yeah. Dad, you had some more?
Okay, so Dad, wrap that. Yeah. So, yeah, wrap up,
when
Pop.
you were talking about the king thing, I was thinking about bosses, people I've worked for. And I've been very fortunate to have really great guys that I work for. But that same thing of, yes, you can talk with them back and forth, but there's an element in there of he's still your boss, and there's still an element of respect, and that in your conversation with him. If you're out, even if you're not working, but you're out together, there's still an element in there, and that's the way I kind of look at it with God and me. Is that when I go into his presence with an element of respect, but also an element of he's listening. He wants to help. He wants to work with me. He wants to good for me and to me, which he has countless times. But there are some times when he says, and it doesn't mean it's, oh, he didn't answer my prayer. What it means is what I was praying for. And that's kind of where I'm at now with prayer.
Gotcha.
Yeah. James.
It's an interesting question, the whole issue of fearing God, and I'm often working in environments where I'm right next to very powerful electrical equipment. And I'm a low voltage guy. I'm not a high voltage guy. And I have a healthy fear of electricity. Been shocked a few times. And it's one of those things. I love electricity. It does all kinds of great things. Makes life wonderful. It runs air conditioning systems and all those great things during the summertime. But I have a very healthy fear that you got to be careful how you handle it. And a similar respect for God. I literally was driving today and I thought I would love to see a worship album that literally has songs where the word I or me are not in them. And it's all about you, about God, just worshiping God. And just that awe, reverence, for who God is. Sometimes I think we do get a little too comfortable, even though, Jesus talked about the fact that he doesn't call us slaves anymore. He calls us friends. So there is a relational thing that has changed slightly, But that doesn't change the fact, like you guys said, with an authority figure, you still show the respect deserved to whoever that is, God especially, kind of thing. So it's one of those, it's a balance that we have in our relationship with him.
We have, so I'll bite. Bond servants. Okay. So so you're free from something else. That's for another discussion. Okay. That's for another deal, but you're free from that, but we're still a bond servant to him. We live to now serve that. And I think we miss the service side of the equation. We think we can now run all willy nilly.
Right.
And it was never about that. It's now I'm a bondservant too. And Paul probably made it as clear as anybody that bondservant is something we don't like to talk about. Paul and being a bondservant. We don't. That's muted when it comes to that conversation, because all of a sudden that means there's expectations from who you are serving. Yeah. You're not a bondservant to nothing. Right. So that's another one of those things. And then how does that wrap up in our prayer lives? So I know, folks, we've given you a lot to think about. This was a little long one. We enjoyed the Aleph Beta side of the equation with this. It lets us know that there's so many similarities into how we're viewing things. I embrace. There's differences. I agree. But if you had to put weight on, there's far more akin than we are not. And that's encouraging to me. And the fact that you can tell with the three of us is that we all have some varying personal experiences and the modern insights that we do as we reflect on these ancient, stories that we wrap these around. We have scrolls with many, 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 I'll say them, Psalms that Jimmy, that talk to just you. In other words, if it was an album, it would be remember the Time Life package you get where you get like 100 songs for a penny kind of deal, all and they all be there. They're all there in those pieces. So I get a kick out of that. That those are due there. So, and what people use in music and things. So I think that's important. So we've enjoyed this series. This wraps up our prayer series. Gents, this has been a blast because we've really had a chance to kind of walk through some fun stuff. And I hope y'all out there are discussing it amongst yourselves. We'll throw out our ideas and let you ponder as we talk about here on the Dusty Feet. And next, in our next series, we're going to jump right back in and we're picking up season 5 of The Chosen. So people that are waiting, you've lasted this long in the video, you'll know. Our next episode will be the beginning of hitting season 5 with The Chosen from Dallas Jenkins. That's how we started Sons of the Father. So any else goodbyes on this prayer thing before we wrap this up, guys?
Yep.
It's
been good.
Thanks, gents. It's been a blast. So look forward to see you next episode with Sons of the Father as we get into season 5. The last week. And I think it's going to be intense. It'll be fun. And we're going to have some interesting things to discuss. So again, shalom to you all. Thank you so much for spending your time here on the Dusty Feet. And have a blessed week.